Hey everybody, let's do a little bit of design history and talk about the Bauhaus. The Bauhaus is a design school from Europe. It was founded in Germany in 1919 and lasted until 1933. So actually the school wasn't open very long, but its influence has been profound on the design and art world ever since. It ended in 1933 because of a little thing called World War II, and the Nazis shut it down. And the teachers and the founders of the school kind of spread out throughout Europe and even into the United States, and their influence, again, has been felt through the generations ever since the school came to be. It was founded by architect Walter Gropius, and Bauhaus actually means building house. And so it's kind of a combination of many different schools of thought in architecture, design, art, typography, interior design, and industrial design. And it's where all these things have come together. This is a picture of the famous school. You can see that industrial look that it had. A lot of modern schools have been based on this ideal, where you have simple shapes, simple forms, simple buildings, efficient, just get the job done. And so if you don't like this kind of architecture, you can kind of blame them. The school was based on a few founding principles that deal with ideas about how design and art should work. And here's a few of them that I've got on the screen. I like the idea that they felt there wasn't a separation between artists and craftsmen. So these things work together. It's a combination of all the spectrum of creativity, where you have arts people, crafts people, photographers, builders, architects, all working together for a common purpose. In today's modern society, sometimes we think of a difference between maybe commercial art, commercial design, and fine art, but this school didn't have it that way. Also, one of their principles was they called it artist is exalted craftsman, meaning that art came from craft, and that as you mastered a skill, as you mastered a craft, your art would get better. And that was part of the process, is to train you to learn how to do things so that you could then express yourself better, which also led to the ideal of form follows function. This is a unique idea that still pervades design today, where form and function work together, but really the form or the usefulness of an object or the design of an object is primary, and then the function of the object is primary, and the form comes later. So as long as it's a useful object and it works, we can then pretty it up after that. All these things, the fancy German word is Geschmackenswerk, however that's pronounced. So complete work of art or synthesis of all forms of art working together. They believed in using true materials. So they loved the idea of when you used wood, to see the wood grain. When you used concrete, they liked seeing the concrete, and they liked seeing the concrete form. They like seeing the bolts, they like seeing the metal, they like seeing those materials on display. Shouldn't be hidden behind some fake facade. They wanted to really show the material, let the material sell it. Minimalism, less is more, is an idea that comes from them. They emphasized technology, so they embraced it at every level. So whatever the area of art and design they were interested in, they wanted to use technology to make it better. They also believed in efficiency of design, meaning that they didn't want to overuse materials, like I said, make a false fake facade. They really wanted to emphasize the minimal amount of material to get the job done so it could be really efficient and beautiful in its simplicity, which comes to simplicity and effectiveness. Things needed to really function, but the simple solution is usually the best solution for them. And then constant development. So there's a need for constant improvement. Let's see what this looked like in art. This is kind of a typical painting that might come from Bauhaus ideals. It's what we might think of as abstract. It really heightens shape and form. It deals with different design patterns. It's a very graphic design, so it's not meant to be representative or natural or beautiful in that sense. It's meant to be an exploration of shape, dealing with lines, outlines, detail, rhythm, just kind of breaking things down to their intricate parts. In design, what does this look like? It looks like using flat color, simplified shapes, getting down to the essence of what something is. Now, this may not be your cup of tea, it may not be something you like, but the design principles behind it are still with us today. Think about logo design, trying to get something down to its essence, simplifying it down to its most useful form so it's easily recognizable. In this case, it kind of looks like a side view portrait of a person. On the other side, there's some geometric shapes with some interesting patterns. Imagine this is the Come to School poster from 1923. Imagine how dramatically different this was than what was contemporary to the time. And I'll show you some examples of that in a minute. Typography. They loved simple design, geometric shape, symmetrical shapes, simplified rounded edges. They didn't like serifs, like lopped them off. And they really brought this ideal of simple, geometric, basic fonts to the forefront. Industrial design, building tables and chairs. IKEA pretty much explains what their design philosophy is. Keep it simple, make it functional. Here you have not only these tables, but they fit together so they can be put away. They're efficient use of space, efficient use of materials. No extra flourish or detail, all square edges, no fancy carving, just very basic and simple. Architecture, you can see how it influenced a lot of what we think of as the mid-20th century architecture, where everything was square and very, basic. Here you have form following function. The function is the staircase on the side of the building, and they wanted to expose that. It was outside the building, and the form of those staircases coming down the side of the building were emphasized because it was a functional use of space. Very symmetrical windows, square, nothing round, nothing too elaborate. So why was this such a big deal, or why was it so different than what was out there? Well, if you go back a few years into the 19th century, you get what's very obviously Victorian design based on what was popular in the Queen Victoria era. So you have these flourishes, these really intricate frames, really elaborate etchings and ornate prints. This is what architecture, interior design looked like in the Victorian era. Think Downton Abbey, right? Really elaborate facades, interesting wallpaper designs, crazy ornate carved furniture, amazing wooden staircases, just really elaborate. And this was almost offensive to the Bauhaus. They wanted to keep it simpler, more material heavy, material specific. So they didn't want it to be like this. Look what graphic design was like in the 19th century. Just over the top. It was all about the intricate flourish, the crazy fonts, just everything was just overdone. Bright colors, detailed flourishes, just really elaborate. Similar to that Victorian design style, in that same era, you have Art Nouveau developing, which was another way of looking at the organic form and beauty and really trying to beautify the space, adding nice waves and organic patterns. Look at how you get kind of an organic pattern in the support beam for that staircase and how it flows and twists and turns. There isn't a a square corner in the building, or at least if it is, they hide it. Um, Very beautiful window patterns and, you know, beautiful lines and mosaics on the floor. This again is something completely different from the Bauhaus. The Bauhaus did not want to see this anymore. They wanted to get rid of it. Here you have a drawing by Mucha, really popular in the Art Nouveau era. It's all about beautiful things, growing things, just the beauty of the world around us. Art Deco is kind of a contemporary design style to the Bauhaus. Think The Great Gatsby, that time period, where everything was kind of industrial. It was still intricate, but it was industrial and more geometric. And you have these very detailed framing and design patterns developing. If you look at buildings in New York, you'll see some from this era that have these elaborate top designs with very geometric sculptures, window patterns, really crazy stuff, but beautiful. Look at this chandelier, just so elaborate, whether it's the material or the shape or the glass or the intricate line patterns developed. Just a beautiful rhythmic design done in that Art Deco style. Again, very different from the Bauhaus. So what does this look like in terms of typography? Well, Victorian typography was all about what you can engrave on a metal or a wooden plate. And these craftspeople and artists spent a lot of time crafting beautifully designed letters to go together. And all these extra flourishes and interesting diagonal lines, all putting together into this beautiful shape. Here's a typical logo style from that time, where it's all about the heavy typography, the interesting flourish patterns, really nicely done. Compare that to Bauhaus typography. It's all about the perfected geometry, has a very logical grid system. Everything is symmetrical. The lines and shapes are the same size and same thickness. There are no serifs. It's all based on circles and squares and rectangles. And it's done in a precise manner. So it has kind of an industrial feel to it. And it's not meant to be growing and organic. It's meant to be machined and designed. Now, Adobe has gone back and tried to resurrect some of these lost typefaces that the Bauhaus created. And you can follow that on your own if you look up the Adobe Bauhaus project. But here are some of the perfected fonts that they've developed based on those initial designs. Interesting ways of dealing with rounded edges and vertical lines. Here's another one, kind of a bolder, machined font. You can see how these fonts and these ideals that started at that time in the Bauhaus led to things like Helvetica, led to things like Swiss design, where things were very simple and white space and less is more. Here's something where you're playing with the positive and negative space. It creates that rhythm pattern, that cut in the letters. And you can see these intricate pieces. It's almost like Legos, where you can take a little block and plug it in here, and now you have an N. Turn it this way, and now you've got an R. Turn it this way, and now you've got a J. Now you've got an L. And so they loved being able to take pieces and fit them together in that efficient way. Now, this influence, like I said, has been with us forever. And I think you know that it's really hit pop culture when you realize that it got all the way down to Super Mario Brothers. So you see the font they used for Super Mario Brothers is based on the Bauhaus. And so if you look around, you're going to see lots of these fonts out there in the world, and now you know where they came from. All right, so hopefully you enjoyed that little trip down memory lane, look at design history. So I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.